How well does the Florida State offense bounce back in 2025, including points per game?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football writer and recruiting analyst. Thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. Today's show, I thought we would mix it up after recruiting the last couple of days. It's time to talk about the offense from a big box perspective. Where did the Noles go after averaging just under 16 points a game last year? One of the most horrific performances in the country. There was no excuse for it, but now revamped offensive coaching staff, revamped offensive line, new quarterback, get an elite receiver out of the portal. You've done all the things that you need to do to get it going. How well did they do that? And at the end, I want to talk about the points per game with all those things. But right off the bat, I also want to talk about it from the perspective of there's no excuse with all the experience they have on this staff and all the new pieces if they don't push for at least upper end of the 20s points per game and pretty much just doubling what they did last year. There's no excuse. I don't care how the offensive line plays out, etc. They should be vastly, vastly better. If you take nothing else from this podcast, note that upper 20s is pretty much a lock, in my opinion, if you've done your job on both the player side and the coaching side. So with that, I've got 8 questions that I'm going to ask. If you're on YouTube, fire away with answering. And if you want to kind of play along in the theory of, well, it's not just how many points they score and all of that. These are fun questions because they lead to a lot of counterpoints as well. So here's number 1. What was the biggest problem with last season's team? The offensive line. Does it gel? They got 4 guys coming in from the portal. And I'm not going to even use them as names. I'm not going to use them in terms of, well, this guy needs to be the right tackle or the center, whatever. It's about how well they gel. Offensive lines have to be a unit. And last year, that's about as far apart from what Florida State was as possible, obviously. I just think that it's going to be much better because everybody they brought in, there was no, well, he might be good. He was recruited heavily. All of them started at their respective institutions. Vandy, Wake Forest, Ole Miss, etc. They found a way into the starting lineup, and you do that by being good. There's nowhere to hide up front when you miss badly as an offensive lineman. So it's pretty easy to tell who the good players are. And furthermore, they have size. Florida State is going to run the football downhill with Gus Malzahn's offense. He made that clear from the opening press conference. And to be honest, that's something that Norvell has done throughout his career. Memphis and Florida State being the last 2 stops, as the head man. But he was a part of some of those teams that ran the ball well at other places. He was at Arizona State. They had a good year when he was there. Quarterback and running back doing a good job. I think they will find a way to maximize Thomas Castellanos because of it, a little more RPO where the quarterback takes off, and they have a bevy of running backs. We'll come back to the running backs here in just a minute. Second question, and this is a must. Will there be a very capable wide receiver opposite of Duce Robinson? There should be. Hakeem Williams is first one that comes to mind. Jaylen Brown, does he bounce back? You get Squirrel White that transferred in from Tennessee. You also have guys like B.J. Gibson, Wayne McCoy, Elijah Moore, guys that were really talented sophomores. There's got to be at least one guy, though, that whenever he is on the field, the opposing team sits there and says, okay, obviously we want to cover Deuce, we'd like to shade the safety or just flat double him, but can we afford to do that? And that doesn't even count Florida State's ability to use running backs in the slot. Jalen Lucas, I said it a million times, I hope he's healthy and ready to go. He adds a dimension to the offense you can't teach, and you add him with Squirrel White, playing those guys in the slot. They can rotate. You always have a extremely twitchy guy that can play in the slot and make guys miss. That is your third guy. And that doesn't even count. We'll get into the tight end momentarily. All the different formations they can use where they stack guys, use triangle, put a guy in the backfield, different things like that. I'm just talking base offense. Hakeem's on one side, and then you put Deuce on the other. How do teams respect your receivers? Because there's no doubt, Gus, again, just like he said in his open press conference, you run the ball between the tackles, you open up the pass game, especially down the field shots, and that's what we want to do. I'm paraphrasing, but that was his offense at Auburn. That was his offense at UCF. It will be in some capacity that offense at Florida State, albeit it will be a culmination with his information combined. This is where it's interesting with everybody at Florida State, and obviously Mike Norvell being the head man and an offensive guy will be a key component of that. It'll be interesting, but none of that works if you can take away the number one receiver play after play. Somebody has to step up definitively to be that number two guy. Who is it? Question 3, Landen Thomas. How well do they find a way to get him in the football game like early? So again, kind of an extension to that number 2. Teams have to kind of balance what they do on defense, making it easier to run the ball, etc. He's really talented. I remember seeing him as a kid who was 15 years old, and I'm like, holy cow, I would take that kid now. So I'm at a 7-on-7 tournament. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Plus, you got Randy Pittman. How much does Amari Williams play at tight end? Remember now, Amari is going to play some on defense in spring, so that is truly up in the air, but just wanted to mention him. But if just Landen steps up as a pure tight end, red zone, third down, goal line, doing bootlegs and waggles, short yardage dump offs, he is a nightmare. If they throw to him on fourth downs, it wouldn't be surprising. Florida State is not going to get back to being a dominant offense unless they're more balanced. The one thing that I really respected when Jimbo's teams were rolling at Florida State, they found a different way to beat you with a running back or a tight end in critical situations. This team should be a lot like that. From a talent perspective, Florida State's running back depth chart is really good, but they also have tight ends that have athleticism and are proven now. Pittman, that transferred in from UCF, that's a very, not just athletic, but powerfully built guy. He could be your fullback at short yardage. You could run him too. Find a way to make the tight end position a weapon. It's something Malzahn's offenses have done, and they'll shift and motion guys. They'll use them to be blockers on the outside for Squirrel White, Jalen Lucas, Hakeem Williams, etc. Make sure all of those guys impact each and every game because Florida State has them. Why would you not utilize their physical traits? They're there, man. This is a great chance, and teams hate it when you have good tight ends like that, especially when they can block in line or go out wide. And I think Landen can do both quite capably. The year in the weight room should benefit him greatly. When we come back, we're going to continue on, talk about Florida State's offense, some of the things they need to do. That is next here on Locked on Seminoles. March basketball is here, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with PrizePicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With PrizePicks, you pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. Fast, easy, and it keeps the game exciting. Here's an easy way to look at it. You can just go and take a look at the picks in less than 60 seconds after you've made them and stay engaged all game long. Whatever it is you want to do, whether you're picking Jason Tatum, whether you're picking Anthony Davis, LeBron James, it doesn't matter who it is, in and out. You don't have to spend a whole lot of time on the app, and it's an easy app to use. Also, they got cool deals like PrizePicks even offers promos on Taco Tuesday. Download the app and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's Locked on College for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Number 4, need a true top running back that's capable of 15 or more carries. Now, here's what I mean by that. Everybody wants a top running back and then depth. You want to rotate guys that don't get beat up too much. Totally down with that. But Gus's offense oftentimes runs no huddle. That's something else we're going to talk about. And if you don't have a guy that's really in shape that can take the pounding on the interior, it's not going to work. Now, this shouldn't be a problem. Cam Davis and Chroma, I don't know for sure how much some of these guys will weigh after spring ball, but Sam, I think he could be that guy. You're going to have Rodell back, but somebody's got to separate and they feel comfortable not just running it, not just knowing the playbook, not just being in shape. They have to be able to do it in the spread formation, moving around, doing different things, knowing all the snaps and all that stuff in a hurry-up scenario. When they get rolling, Gus's offense is a nightmare. One or two guys will change places occasionally, which, again, the running back's got to know what to do. He might move to slot or whatever, maybe he motions. But they keep the defensive personnel on the field for the other team, and that is a nightmare. You spend more gas playing defense because you're chasing the whole time. Offensive players, not as much. So this is a really important factor. If one of those players can separate just by knowing all the little nuances, that might be the reason that player starts and averages 15, 18 carries a game. Who knows? I'm not sure which guy it will be, but Florida State has plenty of talented running backs. Now one of them has to flat out take the reins and move forward. And you still need a second and third guy. Like, again, Jalen Lucas, gadget plays, run him out of the backfield. If they play a team that likes to play man defense, okay, go ahead and put your linebacker against Jalen on a wheel route. Good luck. That's the kind of things you have to do. But again, got to incorporate all the stuff that Gus is good with. Hurry up offense is a big part of that. The next one is just personal. I'm just going to openly admit this. One of my biggest frustrations last year at Florida State, it wouldn't be the play call that bothered me. Wouldn't be the personnel. But the execution or lack thereof on third downs was just insanely horrific. They were at 28.8% last year, bottom of the barrel in college football. Just to make it to the 50 plateau, out of the 134 teams to make it to 50th of the country, you got to be in the 42 to 43% range. With all the players that I've talked about so far alone, Florida State should be approaching 40%. Experienced quarterback, a bevy of running backs, talent at tight end. You got Duce coming in from USC, you got Hakeem Williams, you've got a really good sophomore group of receivers. Like, you got Squirrel White coming. There's no excuse. You got 4 new linemen that are very talented, have starting experience. Third down percentage, if nothing else this year just improves tremendously, it should be third down. Florida State should be 39, 40% if they don't achieve anything close to what they're capable of. That would put them like 55th in the country last year, 60th, somewhere in that range. I mean, that's still underachieving, but still be vastly better than what they did this past season. I think they should be over 40%, obviously. And to be honest, if they hit 45, it wouldn't shock me. Gus's teams, again, they can create a lot of teams being tired, especially in the third and fourth quarter with the way they run the ball and use hurry up. This is a really key step for everybody. But for this year, Florida State, just mentally, they've got to be able to keep their defense off the field and rest guys. One of the ways you do that is just win on third down. Keep drives alive. Next, this one's pretty obvious. I'll be shocked if anybody really disagrees. While they don't play the easiest of ACC schedules, it's still the ACC. It's not the Big Ten or the SEC. You're going to have down weeks. When you get a team down, pound them, put in your reserves, allow them to gain valuable reps. And I mean, they've got to rotate a lot more than they probably want to. I know coaches are stubborn. Do it anyway. So when you get into tougher games in the back 4 or 5 games of the season, and guys are beat up, you're not just throwing a guy out there for the first time. This is one of the hardest things that I've ever seen is coaches adjusting to their starter not being in. You got to play 12 games just in the regular season. They've got to find a way against some teams that just aren't that good in the ACC to beat the bejesus out of them in the first half and play the second half like the game just started all over, and put your veterans on the bench and put your backups in and run your offense, run your defense too, but run your offense. And even to a certain degree in the first half, you're playing somebody, Wake Forest ain't that good. Knock them out. Wait, first quarter, it's up, you're up 17-0. By the end of the half, in that final drive, you've got second, third team guys in, especially in the skill spots. Get them valuable experience. You're going to be going through the offense and the defense all year with the new playbook. It's not fun. There's no way around it. But the best way to get them to get going is when you play somebody inferior for those other guys to get reps. Got to do it. Next, we talked a little bit about the no-huddle offense, but there still has to be some nuances to it that are adapted to the players, not the other way around. You might have players that are really good at it in one sense of the word. You think of no-huddle, you think of just fast break, 100 mile an hour. Well, there's different levels of it. And for whatever reason, if For instance, Thomas Castellanos and the receivers are better at the Cincinnati Bengals when they first started doing this in the late 80s. They called it a sugar huddle. They would huddle right behind where the ball is and then run up to the line. There's little different things you can do to try to make defenses feel uncomfortable. When they're thinking, they usually make mistakes. Whatever it is for Florida State, and Gus is a smart coach with this, they have to adjust to the kids they have. They got a lot of pieces coming in. 4 new linemen, new quarterback. You've got Rodell back, but he was banged up a lot of last year. He's new to this offense. You have a freshman tight end going to a sophomore year, super talented, but still new offense. Adjust to the players. That way the no huddle is taken advantage of. It works, but there's going to be nuances, and there may be different players when they're in the game. You run it slightly different. I know that sounds crazy, but it's really not. If you have guys that are better with check with me at the line, going a little bit slower, you got to adjust to that. And then as the season goes on and they get better, you adjust again. Take advantage of that fast break offense. Make sure the other team can't take it to you. You dictate to them. Finally here, dominate in the red zone. If there's something else that I think Florida State should be good at least competitive with what I talked about earlier with third downs, it's red zone. Again, the 4 guys you're bringing in are all experienced linemen. All 4. Thomas Castellanos is not a guy that's going to be in a moment where he's, well, I haven't seen this. He's been a player that started the last 2 years at Boston College. He's been through the ringer. They have plenty of running back options, and Gus is pretty darn good with the screen game. They will be annoying in the red zone, RPO, etc. Florida State might be one of the top 10, 15 teams in the country in the red zone this year. Wouldn't surprise me at all. Going to need one of the running backs, as I talked about earlier, to really take the reins to do that. And it's possible. We'll see how it goes. But Florida State overall, I don't see how they're not one of the best red zone teams this next year. Again, Gus has proven with this, and they should just be motivated. They didn't score 16 points a game last year. When you get in the red zone and you have a team down because you buried them on a drive, you're on play like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, you got to really want it. Execution is one thing. Sheer effort is yet another. Florida State didn't have enough of that in 2024. Anybody want to disagree with that? I expect to see a completely different scenario with Florida State this next year in that regard. We'll see. There's a long way to go, but Florida State has the physical and the experience to really be that team that nobody wants to deal with in the red zone this year. Micah Pettis in particular at right tackle, I think is going to be interesting. I think that'll be their bull. He's massive. I think he will be their guy they kind of lean on, short yardage, goal line, red zone, etc. He could be a surprise all ACC player. He was pretty good at Ole Miss, but I think he is going to be a bull, and he's just made for what Gus's offenses do. So with that, I've got one more thought. I'm going to give my exact prediction on what they're going to average this next year. A few of the things that I'm concerned about as we wrap up the show. That is next here on Locked on Seminoles. I'm going to go with 28.5 points per game. I said earlier, the upper 20s. I'm going to say 28.5. After what they averaged last year, that's almost 13 more points per game. That's obviously a big jump, and it could be more. My biggest concerns are just, new offense. You're going to have some more penalties than you normally would because it's year one. There's no way around that. It'll drive coaches nuts, but it always happens. And secondarily, you still have so many moving parts. I think the yardage totals won't always match the point totals. Turnovers will be a part of it, just like the penalties. I think Florida State will shoot itself in the foot like most teams do with a new offensive system. It is what it is. I could be a little low on the prediction. Some might say 31, 32. That's fine. But Florida State will be vastly improved offensively. And the biggest thing is they went out. I give them credit for this now. Florida State went out and spent some money. Micah Pettis, getting Thomas Castellanos, Duce. I'm sure they paid a lot for Duce. Not many 6'6", 220-pound wide receivers are running around the free market without a big NIL contract waiting for them. So that's another one. They kept Rodell in-house. They did a good job. And I'm sure people took a run at like Landen Thomas, etc. Florida State spent some money. With that, finally, this is about will. If you want to wear the Florida State helmet, you need to honor it by how well you execute in the offseason conditioning, spring ball, etc. Now, we're not quite to spring ball. We're on the cusp of it. But I think Florida State should be one of the most explosive offenses, at least at times, in the country because how many athletes they have. I am still just worried about the continuity. That's if it wasn't for that, the 28.5 would be 32, 33 probably for me. I think they'll shoot themselves in the foot. Probably have a couple of clunker games. I'm picking them to go 7-5 this season, as I've said several times. But a major reason that I think they'll go bowling after winning just 2 games are all the reasons I talked about today. Again, just going through them. Got to find another receiver. The offensive line's got to gel. Obviously, you got to have players that are working together up front with that offensive line. Or it doesn't matter how many really good players you bring in. Those are some of the keys, but that's just the starting point. The offensive line and everybody's got to be on the same page. When they go no huddle, you got to adjust with the no huddle, third downs, red zone. There's so many intricacies with playing football at the major college level, and you're throwing a new offense in. A lot of moving parts. Makes it fun to talk about, but it makes it very difficult to project. So again, my final prediction is 28.5 points per game for the Noles. We'll see if I'm right, if I'm wrong. Comment about anything that I said or anything you'd like to add, something that you take a little bit differently and why. Love to hear your comments on YouTube. Comment down below. Also, if you would, please hit that like button, notification bell, and subscribe to the Locked On Seminoles podcast. Truly appreciate it. I will see everybody again tomorrow. Take care.